Hello dear friends, in this video I will cover some of the news from the last 1.5 months and I will answer some of the questions of the viewers. So yet another sad chapter from the Hyperborea prophecies started coming true in front of our eyes. Probably it will get much worse. In Canada, the doctors have started openly recommending mass suicide and murdering of babies as a solution for sickness, of course. And I'm reporting on the accuracy of which the prophecies take place, not to make anybody depressed, but to assure those who do not believe in this type of reality that their future will be also exactly as described in the prophecies. But before that, we will see a short period of unbelievable world madness. Like the doctors who recommend the suicide, they actually recommend it to save money. They are also preparing to euthanize babies without parental consent. It's not that they haven't been doing it already with all kinds of medication. Probably the only actual news at hand is that now they are open about it. And probably the most astonishing is that those very same parents continue to buy the government suggested reality and watch TV where it's quite unbelievable, but now they are calling for UN compulsory fixation of everybody. Indeed, this world is stranger than fiction. So Holland has been in the spotlight lately, mostly because of the forced buying of thousands of farms, while in the background, an Israeli enterprise called Redefined Meat has announced that it struck a deal to partner with an importer that will deliver its lab-grown meat to Western Europe. Basically, they will start mass production in Europe first in Netherlands, from where they will export it all over Europe, and eventually it will be all over the world. They claim that their so-called meat is environmentally friendly, although researchers have actually shown that their meat requires more energy and more pollution. So it's not about carbon footprint as well. That's of course a lie. We know that everything they have done so far in the name of carbon footprints has been scam. So let's have a closer look at what they actually want to feed the people with. So what they actually want to sell is something which looks like steaks and real meat, 3D printed pieces of something which are indistinguishable from real parts of animals, and of course in TV appearances the Middle Eastern inventors claim, of course, it's only innocent vegetables inside. But of course, they are not missing the chance in the actual ingredients, and they appear to be genetically modified cells. Only God knows what are they programmed to do, what are they modified for. Possibly this redefined meat is part of what Vyacheslav described as completely new types of foods manufactured and cooked in a special way so that they will look and taste as something genuine, but they will be actually special cyborg food. Those who remain humans, they won't be able to eat it. Maybe this redefined meat is the beginning of this story. Possibly this redefined meat has something to do with the prophecy that those who eat meat, although this is not really meat, but it looks like, they will have harder time during the tribulation, and on the top of everything, and they will have to deal with additional sicknesses and constant nausea. And I really hope that this, the origin of this redefined, whatever, genetically modified cells in this so-called meat have nothing to do with the project about which I posted years ago when they were bragging that they are already Selling in the shops meat produced from cells which they got in from the sewage, because that's kind of waste material which can be put into good use according to them. And after that, I'm only left to wonder which of the news is crazier, this one or the other one. California has released thousands of convicted pedophiles after having them spend only a few months in prison. This trend was also in the Hyperborea and the NewEarth prophecies. A viewer of the channel wrote, "Things are unfolding too slow. I would prefer if it started today and just went through quickly instead of waiting." And actually, many other people who believe in the prophecies, they also express the same mood. They're kind of fed up by this long waiting and slow development. But that is one of the main goals of the parasites, to wear off the people mentally. For example, a survey showed that as high as 75% of the young people reported that their mental health is disturbed after the pandemic and all the resulting turbulence. So that's their goal, because these disturbed people will now create a disturbed reality for themselves. And all that is not instant. It takes some time, couple of years. And that's why the time frame of the events, which I outlined in the first episodes of the End Times, still remains the most probable and the most relevant. And also don't forget that it is very important for them to database and social score all souls. They need to complete that. It has to be functional before the Antichrist openly appears. At this point, it has become crystal clear that their carbon footprint scam score will be one of the pivotal lies, cover-ups, for introducing their belief in the JAL score system. And they are rolling out cell phone applications under the excuse that people will identify easier at gates, and they will provide better credentials when they apply for job, and a long list of a bunch of lies. Of course, all amounting at the end to the same thing: databasing everybody and scoring their level of belief in the JAL. But most likely this will take a couple of more years, the way it is going. So what is called in the prophecies numbering and renumbering the people and putting them in one big beastly machine, that will take some time. And on the other hand, the antidote of that, which is probably the system of Paramonov, that is also not yet launched. That will also take some time to be functional. Again, couple of years seems to be the reasonable time frame for it. 2025 seems to be very reasonable, while meanwhile they brew by force social tension by obviously destroying on purpose the livelihood and the lives of people, which is the perfect prelude to the foretold in the prophecies civil wars. In China, they have already deployed tanks on the streets. In Brazil, they have positioned them because next week they will be needed to fight their own people. And surprisingly, or should I say not surprisingly at all, animals, domestic animals, wild animals are dying in large numbers. Of course, such incidents, they used to always happen, but it really seems they are becoming commonplace now. They are no longer exceptions. What did the old Egyptian prophecies say about our times? People will be finding death more profitable than magical life. And the reason for which I'm reporting on the accuracy of the prophecies and how they are fulfilled is to assure the people of God that everything is on schedule, everything is on time, and at the end, those who withstood the test, those who will not take the one world passport, they will surely continue their journey in the higher realms because the words of the prophets are obviously true. The mass die-off of animals and terrible drought are part of end-time prophecies from all corners of the world. The major rivers on all continents are almost dry. Colorado, the Amazon, Nile, the Indus River, Yangtze. Segment after segment is getting closed for ships on those rivers. But yet we seem to be a couple of years away from the beginning of the actual tribulation. The rest of the video will be an answer to these 3 viewer questions. So the question is if there are any updates on the underground megalithic system in Bulgaria. Honestly, I have no clue since 2 years. I absolutely have no time to check this stuff anymore. First, it was the pandemic turbulence and my relocation, and now since 1 year I'm absolutely busy with planting the new garden, and finally now I managed to complete my project of a very small chicken shed. So during the last year I divorced myself from the computer even more, and I became even more sensitive to it and to the phone. On the days in which I switch on the computer, I can definitely see like a fog around my third eye, and of course poor general health resulting from that. So it is getting colder, and now I will be more indoors. First I will start working on the paintings which some of the viewers have ordered. Sorry for making you wait so long. And maybe in January the paintings will be complete and I will have more time, but I don't know if I will get back to the history research because I always knew that the computer is harming my health, but now I know exactly how much, and I don't know if the entire deal is worth. What is the spiritual reason for high crime rate and violence in South America? When the souls incarnate, they do so in the playgrounds, namely regions of the earth in our case, where the conditions are suitable for the lessons they need to learn. So a relatively higher percentage of the population, of course not all people, find different types of criminal behavior acceptable. That's why they can be convinced to do such things sometimes. The percentage of such souls with this type of beliefs is somewhat higher there. In addition to that, souls who incarnate in South America usually do so for a good number of births. It's not that they jump from one continent to another all the time. And then how come Latin America has always been a turmoil? Again, birds of feather flock together. So souls who need to learn this type of lessons, they congregate there. And in that type of school, it is eternal turmoil because too many of them have this type of beliefs in their psyche. And then from whom do the Amazon tribes descend? Well, all tribes on earth are associated in one way or another to some sort of interdimensional group of beings. That's why still in many tribes the legends are alive that they come from this or that star, or this or that constellation is their guardian, or In many cases, they still even keep the legend what kind of now so-called mythical animal intermarried with some earthly creature and became the first being of their tribe or the first king. These legends are the actual and pure truth. Now, as far as the really untouched Amazon tribes, of which we only have now and then short footage from helicopter, yes, they of course they live the way their ancestors lived, not our ancestors. Like my ancestors didn't live like that exactly, because they descended from different races. Now, that to live the way our ancestors did is in general a good thing. However, as usual, there is however, and the thing is some of these tribes descended from higher races, heavenly, others from realms which are more or less on the same level as Earth. Maybe some did not descend from anywhere, maybe they were made by the engineers of the universe just for Earth. Yet the other tribes, they stem from, they originate from lower species of cannibals, of violent type of creatures. And it wouldn't be beneficial for us to imitate each and every aspect of their life, even if it is traditional. And speaking about the Amazon in particular, those are very closely related to the Asian race, like the Chinese race. That's what I discovered, much to my surprise. And that's exactly what it is written in the first writings of the colonizators, those which are kept locked in the libraries. And also in terms of character, I noticed those people, yes, they share many traces of the character of the Chinese race. And the last question, a person who is chanting the Hare Krishna mantra on his own is asking, do you have any advice, as sometimes the darkness of this age compels me towards dark thoughts like taking one's life? Yes, I do have advice. First of all, you can listen to my video about the Hare Krishna movement, why I do not recommend it for people who actually really want to advance spiritually. It's not that they cannot advance, it's just too difficult, and in overall it seems that they can advance despite the Hare Krishna thing instead of because of it. Now next, although I don't recommend Hare Krishna, I know many nice people within the Hare Krishna movement. I'm not prejudiced towards its members. On the other side, even sometimes I talk to the guru I had in this movement. So what I can tell you from having personal contacts with many people who chant all kinds of mantras in all kinds of sampradayas is that those who chant Hare Krishna within the ISKCON setup, they really don't get the results of mantra chanting other people get, with small exceptions, with very small exceptions. Other people do get the results. I don't know why is that so. Of course, the main reason is, as I have explained, I don't consider them a really honorable presentation of the real Vedic wisdom. Their philosophy is rather modern, recently made up on the Vedic basis and resembling the Vedic one, but not really Vedic. Unfortunately, in key points, it really fails. That's not only my opinion. Many pundits have complained that Hare Krishna have become so famous, and yet they grossly misrepresent Hinduism in terms of philosophy. So most probably the mantra chanting doesn't give enough results because it is not done with the proper philosophy. Other thing is, some people say, I cannot say if that is true or not, but I have heard it from native people in Vrindavan, that Their sampradaya is not really connected to the main branch because one of the gurus was cursed by his teacher, and his teacher renounced him, told him that you no longer belong to our line. I don't know if this is true or not, but people in Vrindavan say so. I lived 7 years in Vrindavan. Some people say, of course. Some of those who are into these things, it is a very small thing in Vrindavan. The Gaudiya Sampradaya is influential in other regions. So why exactly, I don't know, but mantra chanting within the Hare Krishna setup, I definitely do not recommend. I chanted in that way for some years, and the results were unsatisfactory. I wouldn't say there weren't any, but almost none. While when I started mantra chanting a couple of years ago, following one other pandit, the results were 1,000 and million times more. And other people also experienced the same. Also, about the 4 regulative principles which you mentioned, one thing is the element of vow. If you have vowed to do something, in general, it's good to follow vows. Of course, you should have thought before taking the vows, and so keeping the vows is a separate point. In general, I'm trying not to talk anybody into breaking his vows, but for example, I have broken my vows in terms of Hare Krishna, and I'm happy that I did, because if I would have remained in that environment, I wasn't able to make any progress. So I hope I will be forgiven breaking those vows, because I made it for my own learning. At least in my case, I think I did right, but I wouldn't be responsible that somebody else breaks their vows just because they decide that's the right thing after hearing my opinion on Hare Krishna. So you have to decide yourself. So the 4 principles are: first, no drugs, no intoxication. This is in general a good one, and luckily there is discussion in Hare Krishna. Do sacred plants like ayahuasca, do they count as drugs and intoxicants or not? I'm happy that they are open-minded enough to even ask themselves that, and they are not, as some Christian fanatics who, when they just hear the general description of ayahuasca and immediately decide that that is straight from hell. So the first principle, to follow no intoxication like alcohol, for example, and modern synthetic drugs, this is a very good principle, as long as sacred plants used in their traditional setup are not mistakenly placed in that category as well. The second ISKCON principle reads, no illicit sex, which is supposed to mean, according to ISKCON, no sex outside one's marriage, which is, let's say, okay, if we have to keep it short, although if we read the stories in the Puranas, marriage sometimes meant different things in those times, but let's skip this one to keep it short. The second part of this regulative principle says that even within one's marriage, sex is meant simply for propagating children, and one is kind of even sinful, and one should feel guilty if one enjoys it, because this type of enjoyment is demonized in the ISKCON philosophy. Of course, that renders many ISKCON people mentally unstable. It can easily lead to mental sickness as well, because in general, normal people enjoy life. They haven't come here to suffer on earth, and this is a kind of deviation from the normal line of thinking, justified in the ISKCON writings with Vedic quotes, which are by themselves true. They just refer to renunciates, sannyasis in Sanskrit and Hindi. These people, they really are experiencing or want to do rigorous spiritual practice by which they will experience really higher enjoyments very soon. So for them it's okay to follow this type of rigid rules for a short time. But the problem is that the ISKCON members, they unfortunately do not reach those realms, and they get no enjoyment neither here nor there. They're stuck in between, and often miserable for this reason if they follow this regulative principle strictly. To my knowledge, they don't follow it strictly, at least most of them. The main problem is that in the ISKCON books, after every 3 words, there is a big talk about love of God. But how can they love God? They can't even see God. I mean, do you get the darshan of Krishna, like to decide if you like him, or Balaram or anything like that? How can you love somebody you haven't seen or experienced in any other way? And what to speak of seeing Krishna, that is quite a big thing. I mean, in ISKCON, there isn't any practice that will even allow the ISKCON people to see a small ghost. What to speak of big thing like Krishna? So this entire philosophy of embracing misery in the name of attaining higher consciousness, that can lead to self-hatred, and then the thought of killing oneself is not far away from that. But this is just one of the possible scenarios. For example, I know people who benefited from Hare Krishna. For example, these were alcoholics who, when they entered the Hare Krishna society, you know how is it there, drinking any alcohol is absolutely unacceptable. So once they embrace that belief, they very easily quit alcoholism. Or people who are addicted to harmful drugs. I knew one lady who was addicted to loose behavior, debauchery of any type. So she was very thankful that ISKCON pulled her out from that deep black hole. So in general, what I have noticed is that people like alcoholics, serious drug addicts, or some people with serious problems, in the beginning, for them ISKCON is very good. But people who are relatively for the current situation on earth, spiritually advanced, who need only fine spiritual tuning to grow more, for them I noticed that ISKCON is actually preventing them from growing instead of helping. So I don't know your psyche. It's possible that you wanna kill yourself sometimes because of the Hare Krishna environment, but it is also possible that it would have been much worse without the Hare Krishna environment. It is different for different people, but if you feel that my words are helping, of course you can contact me again. And since your question is about the Hare Krishna mantra in particular, the mantra itself is of course good, because that is a Vedic mantra, but as you know, it depends who gave you the mantra, how, and in what mindset do you chant it, and also how focused are you on the sound. And that's another weird thing about the Hare Krishna movement, that they believe that Hare Krishna should be chanting with great concentration, and yet they demonize the Hatha Yoga practices, the Raja Yoga practices, which are nothing else but practices for developing this ability to concentrate on the sound of the mantra. Something else very weird, what is called in the Vedas various incarnations of the Lord, like Shiva, Shakti, Krishna, Ganesha. According to the Vedas, these are all manifestations of Bhagavan. But in Hare Krishna, everybody except Krishna is a devotee of Krishna. So they have conjured this new term demigods, new Hare Krishna manufactured category for all the other forms of the Lord, and they have been proclaimed like the best devotees, the biggest devotees of the Lord. For example, Shiva in the Hare Krishna philosophy is supposed to be the biggest devotee of Krishna. He worships Krishna. Good, so far. Also in the Hare Krishna philosophy, it is said again and again, worshipping the devotees of the Lord is even more important than worshipping the Lord himself. And they have all these arities to the acharyas, to the Prahlad, to Prabhupada, to anybody they consider a great devotee. Strangely enough, not only they forget the greatest devotees, according to them, Shiva, Devi, Ganesh, these are the greatest, but yet they completely forget them, to the point that when they pass a temple devoted to them, they're supposed to turn back. They don't even bow down. That's why I'm telling you, really, these ISKCON people don't know, but the Pandits in India, they're in dismay when they look at this philosophical mishmash of the ISKCON movement.